Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Roosters. This is the Lettermen Lounge. It's Lettermen Live. It's a Monday in January, and there's still a ton of Ohio State football to talk about. We're going to do it, as we always do, in a fun, casual way, in a fun, casual joint. And the team is back together. It's been about a month. The signs are going down. We don't need that. We just need Justin Zwick, Nicole Cox, Bobby Carpenter, Jeremy Birmingham, and sometimes me, Austin Ward, to talk about the Buckeyes. It is 2022.
You're always Austin Ward.
I am, but sometimes, I forget and I trip up. We're back together. Happy 2022 to everybody. Nicole, it's great to have you back in here. It's been a while. How was the Rose Bowl trip giveaway for the Roosters prize winners?
Our winners were absolutely amazing. And I say that every year, but they walked around like this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to them. They were just so appreciative, so sweet. They obviously had the best game ever, to watch. They were on cloud nine, and I don't know, I think there were a few of them that had a rough 2021 year, and they just brought up like how this trip just meant the world and was really like exciting for them. So
what all did they get to do outside of the game?
So right when we got there, we did a little meet and greet, and we gave them all their swag bags, which they thought were the greatest. It had like Roosters chapstick, just some like random things, a t-shirt. They were so sweet.
Any chips in there?
No chips. Sorry, no chips. We had a Roosters cookie in there though, so that was good. But they, and then they had the entire next day to do whatever they wanted. And then the day of the game is actually really early, 5:30 a.m. We have to be on the bus. Yeah. 5:30 a.m.
Playing in the game?
Man, I know, right?
Oh.
Had to get up there and get warmed
parade.
But the travel agency gets these amazing burritos that are like from this like random, random. It's so funny, cash only.
It's the real deal.
It's the best
cash
breakfast
only.
burrito.
Oh, it was so good
in the world.
Yeah, it was so good. And
that's literally the only good thing about life.
I was gonna say, it's starting to sound better to me.
So everyone, that
burritos,
really, it really, because I kept telling everyone about them. I was like, wait, Chris, are you still going to have those? Because I've already told everyone. Yeah. And so that brightened everyone's day. The Rose Bowl parade was amazing. And it was awesome because when we went there in 2019 or 18,
yes.
It was the same, like, shoulder to shoulder. It just felt normal, which was great. So, and then the game itself was just absolutely amazing.
Any bad traffic out there? I mean, do we have any issues? I know Travel Partners, they do a great job.
You left at 5:30. What time did you get there?
Let's talk about Travel Partners for a second. How, like, we literally thought, like, is this real life? Like, are these people? So our bus driver's driving. There is a line of traffic getting off at one of the exits, and I'm talking, it probably went for a mile. We went right past it, got off at the other exit, and then just looped back around. We were like the only ones that thought of it. Travel Partners.
The loop-de-loop.
And Travel Partners was even like, hey, you think everybody's all right over there? The fact that they didn't think that you could just go one exit up and loop back. So it was awesome. So really no traffic for us. It was great.
Awesome. Yeah. The game was pretty good too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What did you think? You didn't get to talk to you last week.
I think it showed a lot of heart for Ohio State. It was a situation where we talked for the entire month, like how would they come out if they got punched in the face? And they did. And
Coach, it wasn't just punch in the face. The ref was almost there because it was a hammer fist.
Yeah, I mean,
and like the head was like bouncing off the turf.
Well, they were at an 8 count, and then all of a sudden, CJ Stroud decided, and Justin talked about it last week, like he took off and picked up a first down they needed, and you can just see it. The entire offense, like they can't stop us if we don't stop ourselves.
But we've got to get some stops. That's the key when you're behind, though, Berm.
And I think that the interesting thing had to have been, all year long we've seen Ohio State defensively kind of fail to make adjustments in the second half. They've done things poorly, and then they've just kept doing them poorly. Something happened at halftime, and led by guys like Eichenberg, who I think they just really got tired of being embarrassed. And I think it really sets things up for the future. It should be one of those games where people watch the first half and go, wow, I cannot believe they're doing this again. And then the second half go, wow, I hope they do that again. So,
I would love to be in that locker room for halftime because I just am dying to know what is said because they come out with a whole new mentality. And I have to bring up something that I felt was very important too to recognize during that game. When you're younger and maybe you're going to a new school or something and you go in and everybody knows each other, but you don't know anyone and you're kind of like, okay, that's what it felt like being an Ohio State fan because it was majority. It was it 80%?
It was significant.
And the Utah people, that was to them like going to the Super Bowl. I mean, it was the most exciting thing that had ever happened. And you could feel that when we would cheer, when they would like say like our players, you couldn't even hear us, you know? And then, so I think that made all of us as Ohio State fans kind of like, okay, this is weird. This is different because we're used to the shoe. So I think, and then the second half, we were really loud and you could hear us, which was really great. And I think that helped make a difference too. I think it's intimidating when the energy is just Utah.
I think a lot of the kids on the Ohio State team talked about it before, throughout the season. They liked going on the road. They liked being sort of the bad guy. And then, you see C.J. Stroud take on that how do you create a villain thing that he said of 2 weeks before the Rose Bowl. And
I'm just calling it villain mode.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you want to call it, he went into it. And, I think as you look ahead, I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about what we can expect in 2022. But C.J. Stroud set himself up in a way that the expectations for C.J. Stroud in 2022 will be higher than they were for Justin Fields heading into 2020. And I think that's something I can't imagine I would have said.
Gosh. Yep. Spencer said it. Spencer said it originally. I'm just going to call that out.
Did he say that?
It's big. It's scary.
Spencer did say he was better than Justin Fields.
Yep.
Yeah, well,
he did.
He's a better. I think he's a better.
I'm giving you props.
He's a
Spencer.
better. He has a better arm. He's a better thrower than Justin.
Remember when
Fields.
he said that?
He still has room to go to be a better.
He's a better
quarterback.
thrower. He doesn't have the arm strength, but he is a better.
He's a better thrower of the football than Justin Fields right now. He throws a pretty ball, man. It comes out of his hand really smooth. The one thing, like going in the game. I talked to a lot of people across the country doing radio hits and everything, and they're like, what do you think? I'm like, well, if Ohio State can hold them to under 120 rushing, 110, 120, I'm like, they'll probably win that game by 17 points. If not, they can still win the game, but it's going to be one where you're going to be probably waiting until the final drive. Ultimately, that's kind of what happened, was the latter of that. Ended up playing much better in the second half, and like Nicole said, it was the thing that I took away from that second half is you had guys, like Tommy Eichenberg stepped up in a huge way. Someone who had been kind of crapped on all season long where, I played 80 plays against Tulsa, didn't have any tackles or whatever. Like, hey, dude had 17. Like, there were some run-through shots. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of playing of football to get better. Defensive line decided, you know what, we need to play a little bit better as well. I think getting Court Williams in there, and he's not perfect, but he made some nice plays as well. There's some that he's leaving on the table.
There was the GASF happening, and I think that at that halftime, I think most of the time throughout the season, you expect that adjustment to come from the coaching staff, and I think that in the Rose Bowl, it was just the players who said enough, because a lot of these coaches probably at that point were like getting ready to check out of their hotels and check out of their offices, and I think a couple of them, Ohio State, they could have folded, and they chose not to, and I think it says a lot about what Ryan Day has tried to implement with these guys, and like I said, I think it really sets up a big 2022.
Jay-Z?
I'm trying to think about what I said about the game last week. 2 weeks out,
I just think with a week of it, are we assigning too much value to it? Not enough.
I think it's important. I don't know if you can carry momentum from the game for the whole team. Like, hey, we won our last game. But individual players, like getting performances out there on film, I think that gives you a confidence going into the offseason. I think the coaches look at it, now they know, hey, when Jackson's our number one, this is what we can do with him. Hey, here's Marvin Harrison Jr. This is what and you can start to build things. Hey, Tommy Eichenberg, is he the perfect linebacker? No. There's a couple limitations he has, but hey, he's really good at this stuff. We've watched him kind of separate and become this guy right now. Okay, Court Williams can do some of these different things right here. So just like understanding, I think, in totality, what some of the guys can do, putting it on tape, because until that point, any coach will tell you, like going from practice to games, it's all projection. Like you think you know what the guy can do. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there was a little bit of that. And then, Justin, he can get into the mean tweets that were coming out during the game.
Well, I mean, you talk about the individuals who maybe got better or felt better about their last game, getting that experience throughout the season. I think it's just more of we talked a lot about getting punched in the mouth. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. As a team, they rallied together. I mean, you give up 10 points in the second half, but that's nothing compared to what it looked like in the first. So I think, in games, in games where it started going that way, where it's 35, like we got punched in the mouth and we didn't fight back per se.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This was a game where that second half we had to fight back. We had to do something or else we weren't going to win that game. And defense came up and they showed up and got it done. So I think that's huge for a team together, even though a lot of those guys will be gone next year. Mm-hmm. Still going through that in a big game on a big stage, saying, hey, we can do this. So next year when they get punched in the mouth, they're going to say,
that's why
we've
it's
been here.
important. And to Bob's point, I don't think it's it's not like you can just carry over the momentum from one year to the next. But the big thing heading into the Rose Bowl was you're losing your leaders, right? You're losing the guys, the Haskell Garretts, the Chris Olaves. You're losing the guys that you know you can count on, and you had to have other people step up. And those guys are going to be back next year. And for C.J. Stroud, who's kind of a quiet leader, for Tommy Eichenberg, who doesn't like to talk at all.
No, mute.
I mean, he may. I don't even know if he has a voice.
I've heard him speak, but only to me.
really-
But then he win an award, and he's like, oh, that's cool.
It's really guttural.
Yeah, like I don't know.
He's caveman.
These kids they had to step up, and they may do it in different ways than Haskell did or Olave did or whatever. But now you have those guys heading into the spring, and I think with 11 new early enrollees arriving on campus on Sunday, like the expectation is now set, and you head into what's next.
Yeah, what's next? That's a great segue, Brim. Also, tomorrow, speaking of what next, it's
Cheesy bacon fries.
Cheesy bacon fries. And that should
In
be the
honor of-
appetizer, guys, because that's usually the substitute if we're out of the
Ooh,
product.
so it should be.
Cheesy
So
bacon
you're saying
fries.
it was promoted to a new role in Columbus?
Yeah, well, it's it has a dual role.
Okay.
Dual role.
Kate Stover.
I just thought maybe it was in honor of the new offensive line coach at Ohio State.
Or Brian Hartline.
Fry.
Justin Fry.
Brian Hartline getting that cheese.
Getting the cheese.
Cheese for Brian Hartline and fries on the
Fries.
offensive line. Just some.
Roosters thinks of it
Nicole,
all.
you did it.
You guys think of it all. I
Guys.
tell you what.
I wish I could take credit for that, but
It's genius. That's $2 appetizer Tuesday. Come get it. And then the rest of 2022, we're going to make some bold predictions. Normally that's a different show for Berm and I, but
Everyone loves it so much.
we're just
we may
going
as well
to
put it down here.
expand it, and anything and everything that you can think of that might happen this year, Nicole. What are you forecasting
for Ohio State football, not in the world, because we can't predict that, obviously.
like I
Try.
said, as you guys know, I love watching this team grow because I feel like, I don't know, it's just we have a lot of younger players, and so they just keep getting better and better. So I think it's going to be an exciting season. I also really do believe that CJ Stroud will win the Heisman. I really do.
Throwing it down. I love it. How many yards will we throw for, Nicole?
Oh.
1,000?
Yeah.
10,000?
Oh.
A million?
I have no clue.
45.
That performance in the Rose Bowl was incredible. I just didn't throw anything off target the whole game. It felt like.
Yeah.
Ever
Well,
since he took his break, man, I'll tell you what. Whatever that week was, he got him right. 'cause
Hey,
he came out
rest.
a different quarterback.
I'm telling you.
And, I mean,
He told you, Jay-Z, it was supernatural healing.
Absolutely.
hey,
it could've been
praise the
mental.
Lord.
Hey, it can be mental
should've
too.
gotten to that.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
A
no doubt about
mental
it, Ken.
just
I'm not,
adjustment.
I don't care what it was. I'm saying when he came back, he was a totally different quarterback, and he kept that going throughout the year, in my opinion. And so that last game, I mean, you talked about the balls. You could look at every game and think to yourself, man, that's a ball.
Yeah.
Like, another one. Like all over the place all year long after that break. So, I mean,
Ryan Day
big
said
things next year.
Ryan Day said it at the time the next week that CJ had to ask himself how bad he wanted it, and I think that whatever happened, I mean, that's probably a 30 for 30 down the road
Oh,
somewhere.
100%.
But if Ohio State goes out and wins a national championship or something, like that's a story that people are going to want to really dive into.
It's a moment in his career that is life changing. I mean, he's talking about people are calling for him to be benched. He takes that break.
Yeah.
You're thinking, backup could go in, throw for a few hundred yards against, who was it, Akron?
Akron, yeah.
Man, that could be tough. He might, and didn't happen. Comes back out, and the guy's on fire ever since. I mean, it was incredible. For him to be able to take that into next year, man, he's going to be scary.
Hey, we need to. Anytime you guys are around him, you need to ask him what someone said to him to make that change. Because I just want to know. There had to have been something a coach said to him that just stuck in his head. Because I'd like to know that as a parent. Just what are these little things that can just stick?
I've had at least 5 one-on-one conversations with CJ Stroud since then, and he just keeps saying that it's not any one thing. It wasn't.
It was the
even
mean
being
tweets he read.
I mean, he
Took
did
a week off and just read all the mean
did
tweets.
turn off his notifications on his phone. He told me this story, which was that he went into the locker
Who
room.
who leaves them on? What are we doing?
That's why he's a freshman, Bob. He
Thing.
doesn't-
Bing, 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 bing,
Can't have all
bing.
those
He went
red
into the
dots on my
locker room
screen.
at Minnesota, game number 1. Ohio State's in trouble. He doesn't have a great half. It's his first start, and he wanted to text his mom. And he had all of his social media notifications on, so his phone is like blowing up. Like, you have to turn all of that off. You're the Ohio State quarterback.
Especially at halftime of a game, yeah.
And he does
start.
He does post some of the stuff. He has ads. He's got to make his money there. Name, image, and likeness. He posted about the villain stuff and the Heisman Trophy, but for the most part, he's turned that off.
Good.
And that, I think, I'm not going to assign value to any one thing, but that's pretty important because there was so much negativity.
You need to go get a flip phone is what he needs.
That once you turned off the outside noise, like inside the Woody, we said it throughout September. There was no doubt that he was the starting quarterback for Ohio State. So I think he probably needed to focus more on the people who are actually giving
that mattered.
Constructive criticism or advice that you can take and ignoring the rest of the people. And I think more obviously getting the shoulder right was physically the thing, and I think turning off his phone was the mental thing.
Oh, that's big. Stetson Bennett rocks the flip phone.
Yeah, he does.
So
I loved his explanation. Like, I got so many other things I got to worry about right now. I can't be worried about that.
Yeah. So my bold prediction will be, since we saw Jackson Smith and Jigba go off, Ohio State's had a plethora of first-round receivers since 1995.
Plethora.
A lot of guys are highly successful college, highly successful at the next level. But no one has won the Blitnikoff since Terry Glenn, if I'm not mistaken. 27 years.
Yep.
27 years. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba brings that thing home this year. I mean, listen, a lot of it is momentum, and I don't know if anybody...
I think he might have already won it, Bob.
Like, everybody else is starting in a 40. He got like 10 yards behind him and was allowed to have a sprint, the fly 40, and just running by them.
Yeah, he's already standing at the 5.
Yeah.
You got to catch him. That definitely helps because that's just, unfortunately, how these award votes work.
Wasn't 1995 the last time Ohio State won the Doak Walker as well?
Probably true. Eddie
George
Yeah.
Heisman that year.
Spencer said thumbs up.
So, I mean, that's one of my predictions is that Travion Henderson will be the Doak Walker winner next year.
Ooh, we're
But
focusing on the individual.
I think
Yeah.
that you're going to see 3 Ohio State offensive players be in the top 5 for the preseason Heisman award watch list with Stroud, Henderson, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And what else? Ohio State is going to beat Michigan next year.
Oh.
That's a given.
Well, it's not. Let's not go back in time here.
Is he going to be the coach?
Ryan Day?
No, Harbaugh.
Jim Harbaugh.
I mean, Ryan Day will likely be the head coach at Ohio State.
Don't say likely.
Are they both leaving for the NFL? Tell us.
You know how that's going to be viewed?
So that's pretty much where I'm starting. I think that
We're going Schlage's
Travion
prediction.
Henderson will be the Doak Walker Award winner. I agree with you that Jackson Smith and Jigba wins the Blitnikoff, and I think 3 Ohio State Heisman finalists out of the 5 guys next year.
3 finalists.
Yeah, if they let 3 of the top 5 finishers. Let's just say that. Which they did. They had 3 of the top 6 in 2019. I think they'll have 3 of the top 5 this time.
That is bold. That would be tough to do because you only get 3 spots on a ballot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't even want to say mine.
Oh, boy. It must be.
Well, no, it's not even that good. When he went with the Blitnikoff, I was going to just say that our leading receiver next year, I was going to go touchdowns, was going to be Marvin Harrison. I think you might have another instance like this year where you had 3 guys. Who do we put up for the award? I think next year you're going to have the same thing. I think Marvin Harrison is going to be a guy that leads the team in touchdowns. I don't want to say yards because Jackson does do a good job in the middle and he breaks a lot. But
Jackson may have 20 catches a game next year. You can see something just
he might.
completely ludicrous.
If they continue this.
You're going to have the same problem next year that you had this year, in my opinion. Yes, Olave and Wilson maybe are better than what these guys are going to be next year, but they still have all the talent in the world. So you're still going to have 3 receivers that you're trying to get the ball to with Trey in the backfield. I mean, it's going to be the same problems. I don't know that he will have 20 catches a game.
The most interesting thing that they did in the Rose Bowl was put Jackson in the backfield. And I don't know why they saved it up till that point. Doesn't really matter now, but my God, is that...
Oh, he's dangerous. No doubt about it.
You can't put a cornerback in the box, so they're going to run it down your throat. And Jackson can run any route. And you saw that sort of angle route, for 3rd down conversion, get him on a linebacker, and with C.J. Stroud's accuracy, that's game over.
100%. But you get Buka in there. He's a little... I mean, he could be a guy out of the backfield. He's a little smaller.
Yep.
That sort of thing. I think they will have to move things around. It's going to be a hard deal again. I mean... The Rose Bowl, you had one guy who had all the experience. You were throwing these young freshmen out there. But I think once those guys get their feet wet, which they did, it's going to be dangerous next year again.
I think Ohio State is going to finish in the top 10 nationally in total defense.
Say it.
Defense?
Ooh.
I believe that if Ohio State had made no changes whatsoever, we know that the scheme had gotten a little stagnant and stale. We saw the improvement not to the level that they wanted. It came undone against Michigan. But the 2021 season was marked by the inexperience of that group. I think significant improvement was going to come naturally. Now, you can take it to another level if you make other changes, and I think it was clear that those were overdue. But when Bob's talking about Tommy Eichenberg, you could see that just the confidence growing from September to New Year's Day. You add that out, Steele Chambers with another year. What Cade Stover was bringing now that maybe he's at home at linebacker.
He is at home at linebacker.
Is at home. You have Cameron Brown back, Denzel Burke at corner.
Josh Proctor back.
Josh Proctor coming off of the leg injury. We'll see how long it takes Lathan Ransom. But I could go down the list. Ronnie Hickman was a first-time starter as well, leads Ohio State in tackles. So think how much better he could be. There were still times where he looked inexperienced, even late in the year. So all those guys, when they get it rolling, Tyleek Williams up front, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. I mean, there's so much talent. And now that you're through some of those, just being on the field, there will be probably, Bob, an adjustment in spring to learning the scheme and getting comfortable and confident with what you're supposed to be running there. But so much of this, like, you just have to understand the way to play football, right?
Yeah.
And they'll have that.
We're not building rockets. We're just playing football out there, Austin. Blocking and tackling.
Yeah.
Let's not overcomplicate the situation.
Okay. Well,
If sometimes a guy grabs your foot, you rip his helmet off and throw it.
He doesn't let go.
Sometimes you have to.
I respect that.
that's
Bold prediction. Cam Brown, another helmet throw this year.
Bold prediction. Cam Brown is involved in a fight.
We have somebody who watches the show. They shank somebody on the field
Cam
next
Brown
year.
is involved in a fight in late November in Ohio Stadium against the team.
Hey,
2022, my bold
Wing
prediction,
helmet.
there'll be a hell of a lot more Cam Brown discussion.
I respect.
Yeah.
Hey, I respected that. In that game, like I always say, you need to do this one. Hey, you tear somebody's helmet off like that because that's going on. You have to have that little edge. Cam has it. It's important for him to be back. That was huge.
All right, Nicole, what else is going on at Roosters now that the bowl giveaway is done?
Well, it's January,
Yeah.
and
Bowl giveaway 2022.
yeah, I think we're just getting ready.
Can't register yet.
52 weeks.
What's the website?
I know. I think we're just getting ready for March Madness, and just kind of watching Buckeye basketball, which has been exciting. And then
Now that they're playing.
Yeah, now that they're
Yeah.
back.
Well, that team is a heart attack. Boy. Every game. Every stupid game.
EJ's been going off, though, hasn't he?
They shot like 70% from the floor last night and still tried to find a way to lose.
All right. That's enough of that.
There's enough basketball.
and then cheesy bacon fries tomorrow,
Cheesy bacon fries.
appetizer.
Yes.
All right, they're in stock. They're in honor of Brian Hartline and Justin Fry. Nicole planned it that way. She is
I
the
love
ultimate
it.
insider. We're going to take a break on Letterman Live. It is brought to you by Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint. We'll be right back.
Everybody knows that Roosters is a fun, casual joint, but the truth is, it is so much more. It's a quick stop on the way home to sit back and unwind. It's a front row seat to the big game. It's a place where you will always find a friendly face. And the home of wings so big you won't believe it. It's your family's other dinner table. So yeah, we're a lot of things to a lot of people. Roosters, a fun, casual joint.
Precision engineering, rigorous attention to detail. A Bryant Evolution heating system is so well designed, it's as much of a joy to install as it is to use.
Good to go.
For the dealer nearest you, visit Bryant.com.
Welcome back to Letterman Live. It is brought to you by Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint. We're talking about Ohio State. The offseason is well underway. A busy week on that front. Ohio State, I think maybe people thought this was a year or two or three too late, but Greg Studrawa was fired on Thursday. Ohio State has replaced him with Justin Fry, another guy that Ryan Day is very familiar with, has worked with in the past. Really, he'd been someone, as soon as Ohio State was ready to make a move on the offensive line, Justin Fry was the guy that Ryan Day wanted to hire. They got him, and they also secured Brian Hartline. He will be the passing game coordinator. He's got a raise that's coming along with that, so he made some moves there. There's the process on the defensive side is ongoing. There's some interviews and behind-the-scenes stuff going on there. Ohio State added Tanner Mcallister, the safety from Oklahoma State, familiar with Jim Knowles. Familiarity is a big order of the day here as Ohio State makes some of these moves. You got to have that everybody on the same page factor going on, but what else? What do we make of the moves so far for Ohio State in the offseason? What else needs to happen here?
I mean, We were sort of surprised in 2019 when Greg Studrara was retained by Ryan Day to begin with. I think that was sort of expected then that Justin Fry was going to be the guy that Ryan Day was going to pursue as the offensive line coach. That transition from Urban Meyer to Day happened at such an awkward time of the year that it didn't really give Ryan an opportunity to look out there. And plus, Greg Studrara had done a very good job developing offensive linemen, multiple Remington Award winners. They'd done a nice job. But over the last couple of years, it's just been a little bit slower than it should be as far as the recruiting stuff goes. Way too much help needed for Stud on the recruiting trail. And after 3 years, sometimes you have to make some adjustments. And I think that it's one of these moments where Ryan Day has tried to, over the last couple of years, make people understand that this is his program and he's going to put the moves in place that he thinks have to happen. And it's not always going to be popular. I mean, I was on the field at the Alamo Dome when the announcement of Greg Studrara being let go happened on Thursday with George Fitzpatrick, one of the 2022 signees, and then Carson Hensman, the 2022 commitment, who had committed to Ohio State 2 days earlier, and they had no idea. And it's an awkward conversation for me as I'm trying to talk to these kids after practice, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, did you hear this?" And then all of a sudden, it becomes a much different thing. But I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. Ryan Day has to run Ryan Day's program, and this is just one of those things that had to happen.
So, as you talk about that, it's a first-time head coach. He hadn't coached in college in a while. He comes in, he's coordinator, takes over the interim role. Urban comes back. And so he was handed off, a great program with great structure. And I think it's tough early on. Like, you're giving this, he's a young guy. And it's not like he has this vast network of coaches in college, guys who he's worked with who are at other places. And so you're given something that's pretty good. And so the risk is early on, like, there's things I think can be better, but how sure am I?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's slow play this. It's not bad. Like, it's not a bad situation. It's not untenable. Like, let's proceed forward and we'll see how things kind of break and how things move around. And I think that's where we're at, where Ryan's beginning to want to put his own signature, his own stamp on the program. There's things here that, especially from an off-the-field standpoint, you're talking about Mickey Marotti, Mark Pantoni, Brian Voltolini, like the whole, Adam Stewart, all these guys in the medical and player procurement and weightlifting, strength field, like they're fantastic.
Yeah.
It's like, boom, we're going to leave that. We're going to leave those
meddle
bones.
with that.
Yeah, don't mess with that, because those guys are the real hard guys to find. Because no one's
he's trying to keep those guys at Ohio State instead of them going off somewhere.
Where do I go find like an elite physical therapist that can rehab the 47,000 Achilles that happened and get these guys back in 4 or 5 months? Like Sean Barnhouse, the trainer, does a great job. Like, they have a great support staff. Strength coaches, they're not easy to find. Recruiting coordinators, really hard to find guys that do a great job. So, I think that's perfect. And then on the offensive side, it's like, okay, I've got some guys here that I like. I guarantee you, like, he's probably feels very fortunate to continue to have Kevin Wilson on the staff, a guy who's been a head coach, who's been experienced, who's dealt with, like, player personnel issues, things when you're taking heat from the outside, like some of this coaching stuff. Like, you have to have things you can ping off of someone and back and forth that have been through it and understand it. And by the way, he's a great offensive mind as well. Mm-hmm. And so, having that and then building out your staff, making some changes here and there. And, so it was a matter of time, as these things slowly happen. And this year it felt like, okay, when you don't fulfill the expectations, because I don't want to call this season a failure, because I thought there was a lot of good things that happened. But we don't fulfill the expectation of winning a Big Ten, beating Michigan, making the playoff. Okay, well, what has to change? And so that's where some of these things are beginning to kind of turn right now. And, Ryan's kind of putting his own stamp and his own hands on the program a little more.
Yeah, I don't even know if it has as much to do with kind of having that feeling sometimes in the season, like, man, something needs to happen.
Yeah,
as opposed to just Ryan saying, all right, I took this thing over. I didn't want to, ruffle all the feathers, or we didn't need to make a ton of changes when I first came in. I'm feeling a little more comfortable now. I know what I want on my coaching staff, and I feel better going to someone who's older than me, who's been coaching longer than me, saying, you're fired. Yep. I'm going in my own direction. You're the old Don. You're fired.
Because it's not about on-the-field stuff. Ohio State has the number one ranked offense in the country, the number one ranked rushing offense in the country, more yards per carry than anyone in the country. There's all these things you look at and go, okay, well, there's a lot of reasons why Greg Studrara should be safe in this position. But
it's his baby, and he wants to have on his staff who he wants.
You risk things going stagnant a little bit. Mm-hmm. And in the last couple months, you have guys that have dealt with some health issues on the staff. Greg is one of them who had the back issues that kind of put him out of
He missed a week earlier this year, right?
And not saying that's being held against him by any measure, but you can see perhaps that as guys get older in this business, focus sort of shifts a little bit. And I think that Ryan Day is in a position where if he doesn't beat Michigan next year, Ryan Day may very well lose his job. And that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
It was, I'll just put it this way. Somebody involved in this decision-making process said, I'm not going to have 6 years to get this thing right and beat Michigan like the other coach may have had. The situation is far more urgent, and the standards here are different. Like, they just are. If that other coach thinks it's good enough to win one time,
it's only the beginning,
and get to the and win the Big Ten, and then call it and say I'm good, that would never fly here. Nope. That's not. You've accomplished everything. Great job, Ryan Day. You got to the college football playoff twice and won the Big Ten twice. That's not it, and he knows.
At Ohio State, you have a 10-2 or whatever the record was, and you're firing coaches and you're bringing new guys in because you're trying to find what it is that made you lose those couple games.
And that's what Bob was saying. We're talking about a team that went 11-2 and won the Rose Bowl, and all the conversation is that they didn't win the Big Ten, that they didn't win the national championship, they didn't get to the playoff. The standard is so much different here, and he understands that. There was no way that he could stand pat. And I said in the first part of the show, Ohio State was going to get better next year no matter what because there was so much youth on this team. That includes C.J. Stroud as a first-year starter. All that stuff's going to get better, but he's viewing it in a different lens. It's not just, what can you do to beat Michigan, because they're so much more talented than Michigan. I'm pretty confident, I'll say it right now, that that's going to happen, and I think he wants to beat Jim Harbaugh badly, which maybe that is – why Harbaugh seems to be involved in 3 other jobs, I don't know. But the point is they are looking at this and not just saying that the status quo is going to be fine and that next year they'll bounce back. They're trying to get it back to a higher level and accomplish something that Ryan Day hasn't done yet.
And I think there's also a component to this where Ryan Day understands his role has to change as the head coach. He's young as a head coach. He's had his hands in everything. He's been very, very involved with the offense. He's been the quarterback's coach. He's been the offense coordinator. He's been the play caller. Bringing in a guy like Justin Fry, who's been a co-offensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator out at UCLA, he can work with Kevin Wilson now, let those guys kind of run the offense. There is a desire for Ryan Day to become more of a CEO type of coach.
He's so good at calling those plays.
And that's something that he's going to have to struggle with.
I wonder if he'll be able to do it.
Honestly. I mean,
you put Hartline in there. Maybe he feels like they're on the same wavelength, kind of.
Promotion to the passing game coordinator.
So you go with those 2 other guys you were just talking about.
These are more things that Ryan Day is trying to take out of his own hands, and I think that he understands for his long-term success. If you watch what Nick Saban does, if you watch what Urban Meyer did before, you have to back out a little bit. Being the head coach at Ohio State is not about being involved with every single part of the game plan, every single quarterback meeting. He has to trust his guys, and I think that's why it's so important with the Justin Fry hire, is that it's his guy. This is a guy he worked with at Temple. It's a guy he worked with at Boston College. It's a guy who's been mentored by Chip Kelly, who mentored him. There's no doubt that he trusts him to do the things he has to do. Plus, then you add in some of that youthful exuberance on the recruiting trail where you can, again, avoid risking that stagnation that I think maybe if you're on the inside over here, you kind of feel that a touch, and there's going to be more changes. That's
when recruiting's changed so much, you get some younger guys in there that maybe have grown up with it a little bit more maybe in their coaching career. So I think it just freshens everything up, and I don't think you miss a beat, really.
Some fresh fry. Bob, what's the balance of that, though? Because if you look at the end of Urban Meyer's tenure, the question was, well, does he hire too many people that he knows? Bill Davis and Greg Schiano and Taver Johnson and on down. Those weren't creative hires, and they weren't pushing the envelope. And I think that the Justin Fry hire is an upgrade for Ohio State and a great move for them moving forward. And I'm not arguing that point. It's a devil's advocate question with how much of that do you need on your staff that's like they're just going to do things my way versus I want to be challenged, which maybe Jim Knowles is that part for Friday. I don't know.
Gosh, I forgot Taver was even here last year after Kerry left.
It was a decorated tenure.
And then I remembered some of the things I heard Urban yell at him during practice.
Now
he said that.
We can take that.
I was trying to remember, all of a sudden, I remember that. It's not appropriate to repeat.
Mm-hmm. I think I saw him on the sideline last night in the Raiders game, and that sparked my memory.
Really?
Hiring guys you know is different than hiring guys you know that no one else will hire.
There's truth to that.
Okay. There is truth.
All right.
It wasn't like Fry needed a job. He was the Was he the co-offensive coordinator? Yeah, at UCLA. Like UCLA was I feel like they're turning the corner a little bit there with Chip Kelly. They're doing some good stuff. And you want to hire people that are familiar with you and understand what your expectations are. I think that's a big piece of it. You don't want to hire people that are just going to nod their head and tell you yes. If you need some creative conflict to be happening there. There needs to be a little bit of friction where people are pushing back like, hey, just because you think we should do this, I'm telling you, I think we have this idea. Let's figure this out. Let's try them both, and we'll see kind of what happens as opposed to, oh, yeah, coach, greatest idea ever. Yeah, let's check that
you're
out.
The best.
You're the best. I mean, and you get that where you can't have groupthink happening and everybody just acknowledging that. And on the defensive side of the ball, I think there's a little bit of that as well, where it's a combination of having guys who know each other, who are smart, intelligent guys, who are able to push on each other enough to where you're building a game plan of like, hey, I've done this before, you've done that. What's the best way to kind of handle whatever it is we're trying to attack, these different offenses. But also the guys knowing each other well enough that they're comfortable and they're confident, and no one's overly defensive of their room. And that's what happens sometimes in football where you're like, well, we're doing this, like you're hanging my guys out to dry, we're doing this. And you understand, like, hey, this is part of the game plan this week. It's going to be we're putting the onus on your group to get it done. This is going to be tough. And whether, you're like, take offensive lineman, we're getting 5 out this week. We're not getting a chip. We're not going to hang. Okay, well, there's weeks where we do that when we're playing, off defensive linemen that are elite or whatever, but we're going to have to do some of this. You see linebackers in secondary getting into it all the time. Like, well, hey, you're going to have to go man-to-man tight end. You're getting help here. Are you doing this? Like, and understanding, like, you know what? We're going to try to do a little bit of everything and don't always be overprotective of my guys. There's things that you've seen that you've worked that can kind of permeate different rooms, and we can kind of bring these things together collectively. So having the right type of guys that are confident enough together that are willing to be collaborative and work together, but yet also push back. Like, you have to have people that are comfortable, and Ryan is in charge with creating that environment, number one, by the type of guys he brings in and then by the leadership that he's going to display. And so when you bring guys in from all across the coast that maybe don't know each other, you got to make sure that they get to know each other and get to know each other well, so you're not dealing with things in training camp that should have been worked out in February and March.
That's a great
He's
point.
been so big on cohesion and the coaching cohesion over the last few years. That's why he promoted Matt Barnes. That's why he promoted Parker Fleming. And I think that there is obviously benefits to that because you know who the guys are, you know who's capable of what. But I do think at times you get a little bit tribal in your position groups, and the linebackers are fighting against the defensive backs and saying, "Oh, why are you putting this on us? Why our room isn't responsible for this? Our room, But at some point, none of that matters, and you just have to find a way to make the entire defense come together. And the hardest thing about sports, in my mind, is trying to mesh egos, because high-level athletes, highly successful coaches, everyone got there doing it the way that they thought was best. And you have to try to combine a lot of those egos into one,
with your egos combined.
Right.
We
Captain
You got to
Ego.
go Voltron, right?
Yeah.
You got to go Voltron. And Ohio State.
It's we, not me.
At this point, Ohio State, I don't think went Voltron this year. And I think that showed on the defense. You looked like a bunch of little cats.
Kind of more like
Giant
Captain
robot.
America's Civil War. That's more like that.
A little fractured. A little fractured at times.
House divided. Who's going to win the national championship?
The SEC.
The SEC.
Nicely played.
I honestly
Get burped.
and it's funny because we sit here and we're talking about this right now, and you have two schools of thought. I mean, Clemson's just promoting anybody within. At some point in
Keep
time,
people honest.
Hey,
their offensive coordinator.
Hey, you play for us. Come coach.
Imagine covering the Clemson offseason compared to this one for Ohio State. That's a real clown show that Dabo's running right now.
It is,
Clown
but
town.
ultimately they finished 10-3. And we can laugh about
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Believe me,
Bad year for
their
them.
conference was not great, and but they did end up going 10-3. And they ended up looking a little more competent. Now, problem is their solution right now at quarterback is not looking like a great solution for anybody, and so they're going to have to make some hard choices in what they do in the spring. But you have that, and then you juxtapose that with Nick Saban, who Nick promotes a lot of guys inside. And does some things. And you see guys work their way through ranks, like Kirby Smart started with him, worked his way up. Mel Tucker came back, worked his way, and went to Georgia. But then they also just bring in guys from the outside as well. And
He's
so
the king of bringing in old head coaches.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. Hey, come down here and work for a few years, and you'll be a head
I
coach.
think Nick understands the value of guys who have been in leadership roles, who've had to go. When you've had to go to the podium after a game and answer questions about the calls you've made
Yeah.
Like good and bad. Like, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Hey, they rushed for 800 yards on you today. What happened? So when you're like a defensive coordinator or an offensive, like, hey, you give up 7 sacks. You singled this guy and he had 5, and you never once double teamed him. Did we think about that, Coach, at all during the game? And so when you had to do that, I think that there's a sensitivity around like, okay, I know what he's going through. This is the way I've done it. This is the way Nick does it. We can integrate some things. Those guys are often, a lot of times, more inclined to push back because they've been head coaches, and so you get some of that natural friction as well.
Got Doug Marrone and Bill O'Brien running their offense.
That's what I'm saying.
And it's not even just that Nick Saban understands those.
And Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian before that.
He understands their value, but those guys understand his value as well.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately where Ryan Day is trying to get. To get to the point where coaches around the country say, I'm going to come in and do it his way because I know his way works.
His way of doing it, but I can have my ideas, and we can integrate my ideas within how he operates. So if you go and watch, the Bama-Cincinnati game, it was a very Bill Belichickian, who Bill O'Brien coached, obviously, for Bill Belichick. Very Belichickian thing, like, okay, you got really good corners. They've got a pretty good defensive line. They got some pretty nice pressure with Najee Harris and stuff off the edge. So we're just going to run the ball a lot. And it's not going to look pretty, and we're not going to throw at Kobe Bryant, Sauce Gardner. We're going to attack the inside where they're a little bit weaker, and that's how we're going to operate. And so, like, taking that methodology, and we're going to spread them out and exhaust their massive D-line. And so, like, that's like a Bill O'Brien thing. We're like, okay. And then Saban, and this is the one thing, he looks at this holistically. It's like, hey, how can I blend this into what we're trying to do defensively to make sure our whole game plan fits? Like, we want to make sure that we're pushing this back and get a lead and try to, put the pressure on their quarterback. How do we do that? How do we tie their defensive line? How do we play? Like, all these things together. With that being said, that's why I think Alabama's going to win.
The game,
yeah. There's 2 things for me that I almost always look at as you look at 2 teams playing the game like this. Who has the better coach? Who has the better head coach? And who has the better quarterback?
Yeah, check.
So I think Alabama has both of those things. I obviously, this will be the 5th time since like 1960 that 2 teams who are both in the top 5 have played twice. So both times they played, they were in the top 5. And all 4 other times, the team that lost the first game won the second. I don't think that's going to happen tonight. I think Bama wins. And Stetson Bennett is
saying they're due.
Stetson Bennett's a fine quarterback. I'm not an anti-Stetson Bennett guy. I think that eventually,
anti-Stetite?
At some point, the decision to not play JT Daniels this year is going to bite Georgia in the backside, and I think it's tonight because you need to have that guy that can really be a game changer, not a game manager against someone.
Yeah, he did more than manage that Michigan game, though, in my opinion. I mean, he threw some nice balls. You got to put him on the numbers.
The only time that he's ever really been pushed against it, where they've been down, is against Bama.
Bama, yeah. No doubt about it.
Coach, you and I'll go out there and throw when we're up 14, and I know if I hand it off, we can get 8 yards on second down.
It does make it easier, no doubt about it.
Now, Georgia does have George Pickens back today.
He is back. That's
they didn't
big.
have in the first game. That's a different.
We did play in the first game,
he just got back.
He had the one catch for like 37 yards. They need like 2 or 3 of those.
And Alabama doesn't have John Mechie, who they did have in the first game. So there's, I think you're going to see a really – I don't think this is like 9-6 LSU, Alabama 2011. I think you're going to see I
don't think it's a blowout like the first game.
I think you're going to see like a 42-39 final, something – I think it's going to be a really great game. I just tend to err on the side of Bama in these cases because, well, they all
it's Nick Saban. And he's never lost.
He's
to an assistant. He's never lost to an assistant, right?
Jimbo got him this year.
That's right. That was the first one.
First and only time. Still,
fair.
It took like 24.
It took a long time. He's put a lot of guys from his staff as head coaches.
Someone proposed this to me. I think it was on Saturday. I do a show with Chris Plank. He's like works for Oklahoma and does like their radio stuff and TV. And talking to him about everything that's been going on has been fascinating with Caleb Williams and all of that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But he's like, I have a theory. It's like Jimbo was 0-4 before he beat Nick Saban. Kirby Smart is 0-4.
Is he?
He's like, those are the 2 coaches that have played him the most. Maybe it takes you the problem is usually you're fired before you get the play.
You don't get that 5th shot.
He's like, but maybe it's the 5th shot that gets it done.
I think it's hard for 2 good teams to. I mean, that's tough to turn around a few weeks later and beat them again. So that's the only reason I think Georgia might have a chance. But it's hard to go against Nick Saban and what he's been.
I think it's going to be back and forth. I think it's going to be a great game. And again, the addition of Pickens and the loss of Mechie does sort of
even things out a little bit.
neutralize things a touch, but ultimately,
We got J-Mo.
ultimately, I'm going to go
Shots at J-Mo.
with Bama.
Part of it, like I look at some of the things. Bama, like you said, there's the receiver swing +1, -1. I look at what Bama did in that first game, and I don't see Georgia really having a solution for what Bama was able to do.
Especially because their running game now feels a lot more confident after the playoff against Cincinnati. Brian Robinson, his game is starting to peak at the right time, and this is the playoff, man. You're going to go out there. There's going to be a couple sledgehammers just thrown at each other, and I think it's going to be a great game. That's all I know. That's my bold prediction.
They rushed, I think, Bama for like 115 yards in the first game. Robinson only had 55. The guy who hurt him, and I don't think they have an answer for this, is Bryce Young. He had three for 40.
Yeah,
that dude's fast. When he pulls it down, it's trouble. And that's as a defensive coordinator.
He only does it.
Use that as their game plan all year, and I wouldn't be surprised if tonight you see a lot more of him.
100%. It's the last game of the year. You're not saving this guy for anything.
There's also two other helpful gambling tips, and that's never back Georgia in a big game. And don't bet against Nick Saban.
Don't bet against Nick Saban. I tell people, they're like, really? Like, look at him. He wins all these games. Maybe Georgia wins tonight, and I'll be happy for Kirby Smart. But it's a fool's errand. I don't want to be this is one of my friends told me. Settlers get fat, pioneers get slaughtered. I don't want to be on the front line of trying to bet against Nick Saban anymore. I'm done with it. I'll lose this game, and then I'll start figuring it out.
And then you see what happens.
But Georgia is going to win tonight. So
hey, all right.
That is
100-0.
It won't be
Austin Pioneer War.
But Bryce, Georgia's going to get more pressure on the quarterback than they did in the first game. There was just something about the way they came out that was flat in that first one. It was like they
were up 10-0.
Hey, the way they played, they were like, all right, we're good.
Yeah.
That's my.
You start to sound like all the Georgia fans now that's saying, "Hey, we didn't need to."
I'm not saying that.
We got up 10-0. We said,
"I'm not saying that." I'm just saying that was. They looked more like the Georgia from the rest of the season in the semifinal beatdown, and I think that everyone has one bad game. This is a hard sport to play.
It is
that many times in a row. So I think Georgia will get pressure, and I think Bryce Young. He would not have a Heisman Trophy if Auburn had simply stayed in bounds, and I think that Bryce Young is overrated. So. That will be tonight on
bold
Monday
prediction.
night.
Hot takes.
And then tomorrow you can come in and get some cheesy. I'm going to let Bern just try over here, and we're going to wrap up the show.
Last week, I wrote a story that said C.J. Stroud is the best returning quarterback in college football, and I believe that. But I very intentionally said, this is not a shot at Bryce Young. Bryce Young's really freaking good.
I thought so until today.
Bama fans.
How good was he for 59 minutes against Auburn?
Does anybody know? /Award Sports.
Does anybody know how good he was for 59 minutes against Auburn?
I know he was good in that last minute.
How good was he against Cincinnati for the most part?
He did exactly what he had to do against Cincinnati.
Whatever. My feelings are on the
I
right.
know. Listen, he didn't. He also didn't run it against Cincinnati.
That is spicier than my.
I bet he has 65 yards on the ground tonight.
I bet he has 100.
Gosh, if he does, I have anxiety thinking about that for those linebackers. Nicole Dean, great player. Chasing Bryce Young. I don't care, though. When you drop back in coverage 15 yards, then you see the quarterback pull it down, and it's like 3rd and 7.
Nobody in front of him, and it's you versus him. Forget about it.
Oh, it's so terrible.
A heavy part of their playbook tonight.
We'll hash that out next Monday on Lettermen Live. It's brought to you by Roosters. Enjoy the national championship game. We'll be back for more coverage of everything happening in the Ohio State offseason all week at LettermenRow.com, and obviously next Monday when we get back in here at the Lettermen Lounge. That's Jay-Z, Bobby Carpenter, Berm. I'm Austin. Thanks to Nicole Cox for having us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week at Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint.